What's up YouTube? Welcome to another video. So whether it's the most cheapest budget computer out there or the world's most advanced quantum supercomputer, somebody out there is gonna always ask this one question: can it run Fortnite? Always without fail. Well, unfortunately, we don't have the world's most advanced computer, but we also don't have the cheapest budget computer. What we do have is a M1 Mac Mini with us today, and we're going to be running Fortnite on it to see if it can actually hit 120 frames per second. That's probably why you clicked this thumbnail anyway, right? So all things considered, I have to say I was totally blown away by the performance, and I think you guys will be as well. Also keep in mind, whether you're actually potentially buying a MacBook Pro, a MacBook Air, or a M1 Mac Mini, or whether you already have it, you just want to see how Fortnite runs, it's worth noting the performance across all three devices will be relatively similar with minor variations. I do have the 16GB version of the M1 Mac Mini here with a 256GB solid state drive, but again, keep in mind, even on the benchmarks for the 8GB version, the performance really isn't that far off. And if you're worried about the MacBook Air, which is the weakest of the three because it doesn't have active cooling, the fan never once went off anyway, so I'm not expecting too much performance difference to begin with. With that said, I'm going to do a detailed test for you guys to see if you can actually hit our desired goal of 120 frames per second. If you enjoyed the video, like it please, and consider subscribing to my channel. I got all kinds of awesome content for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get started. While the ultimate goal, like I said, is to run Fortnite at 120 frames per second, I want to take a top-down approach to see just how far I could push Fortnite in terms of the graphics and resolutions department. So naturally, I ran it at my native resolution for my monitor, which is 1440p or 2K. And I let Fortnite kind of decide what the best settings would be, and to my surprise, it actually set it all towards the high preset, which again kind of left me a little doubt if this is the correct setting, but I went along with it anyway. As soon as the game started, I was absolutely shocked. We had a steady, sustained 30 frames per second no matter what I was doing in the game. Now granted, there were times where the frames would go slightly towards, let's say, 25, 26 FPS, but there were also times when I was hitting mid-30s in the frame rate department as well. This is crazy. We're running this at 1440p, friggin' 2K at high settings, and this game looks perfectly nice. It's perfectly playable. It is totally viable. I mean, again, this kind of performance on an integrated GPU is crazy. There's only a handful of computers that don't have dedicated GPUs that can dish out this kind of performance, and the M1 here is absolutely killing it. Also guys, it's important to keep in mind here that Fortnite is not optimized for the M1 chips, which means it's still an x86 application, so obviously it was being emulated via Rosetta 2. Despite the overhead, however, we're still getting such amazing performance. Of course, I wanted to see if I could improve the frame rates while keeping high graphical settings, so I lowered the resolution to 1080p while keeping the same high presets we had at 1440p. And again, I was pretty impressed. Now, the jump in performance wasn't as dramatic as I thought it would be. So instead of hitting 30 FPS sustained, we were now hitting somewhere in the neighborhood of lower 40 frames per second. Sometimes this would actually go all the way up to 50. Other times it would drop down to the mid 30s, but the game still looked crisp, and at the same time we were getting super smooth performance. Now granted, we weren't hitting 60 plus frames per second here, but once again, this is totally viable, and if you're looking for 1080p gaming with high graphics, you could totally pull it off over here as long as you're okay with a sub 60 frame rate. And overall, once again, keep in mind the fan on the Mac Mini has yet to go off even once, and I think this match lasted about 10 minutes or so, so amazing. Now I know there's a subset of you who are saying, listen up, you scumbag, you promised us 120 frames per second, so you better deliver. Yes, I get it, I'm working on it. So what I did, of course, is I naturally reduced the graphical setting to a medium preset while keeping the resolution of 1080p. And I have to be honest, in my opinion, the graphics look pretty nice even at medium. Yeah, they're not as crisp or shiny as they were on high, but they're still pretty viable from an aesthetics perspective. But the real gold over here is that increase in frame rate. We were now hitting 90 plus frames per second. However, one thing I noticed is that the frame rates bounced around a lot more, whereas on the other settings, they were kind of more stable. So there were times when we were hitting all the way up to 120 frames per second for brief moments, but there were also times when there was too much going on or if the view distance was too great, we would drop all the way down to the lower 70s. So the frame rate was all over the place, but the average I say is around 90 FPS, Once again though, this is a super stable, super smooth, super enjoyable frame rate, and to me this was kind of the golden spot where I was having a fantastic time viewing the game from an aesthetics perspective. At the same time, I had a smooth experience because the frame rate was at 90 approximately, which is more than viable for gaming, and it makes for a great competitive gaming experience. But again, I know, some of you are still not content, so you want to see if I can actually hit that sustained 120 FPS. So let's find out. This time I put all my chips in one place and I went all out praying that I hit 120 FPS without having to adjust the settings again. So what I did is, while keeping a resolution of 1080p, I did lower the graphical settings to a low preset, and I was really hoping this is the lowest I'll have to stoop down to. Well, I loaded up the game and bam, here you go. We finally hit that desired frame rate. Not only did we hit it, we were sustained at 120 frames per second non-stop. So I actually removed the frame counter from 120 and brought it all the way up to 144, and we were hitting upwards of 130 frames per second, and we were always above 120 for most of the game. This is crazy. Now I have to say the game starting to look more and more like Minecraft and less like Fortnite when you start hitting low graphical settings, and it gets a little too gloomy for my liking, but it's definitely still playable and doesn't look miserable at the very least. But you have that super smooth frame rate and it runs like a charm. Would I say that 120 FPS is the ideal gaming point at this point? No, I wouldn't. I would say that medium settings 1080p is kind of the smooth spot or the golden point. But yes, it is totally possible to run this game at 120 frames per second while maintaining a 1080p resolution. So all in all, I thought this was a win. Hopefully you didn't think this was clickbait. But yes, here you go. All the footage you saw, by the way guys, was directly recorded on my machine. None of this is outsourced footage, so rest assured everything is run local. All in all, I hope you found this comparison to be helpful. I hope you're now convinced that the M1 chips can definitely handle games. Also, it's worth mentioning that there were a few crashes a few times actually, because this is again a non-native M1 application. There were times when the loading screen would take longer than usual, and I think once or twice I actually got stuck on the loading screen when I died. So these are glitches. I don't know how long they'll take to resolve given Fortnite relation with Apple right now, or Epic Games, sorry, relation with Apple right now. So we'll see about all that. But if you did enjoy the content, consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. Also, a special shout out to my initial, they'll be mentioned in the credits right after I conclude this video. So give them a shout out, and thank you so much everyone for watching this video once again. I'll catch you in the next one. Soul of Tech, logging out.